This week on LTC News, a local primary election recap.
Really, every vote's been counted right now except for 100 in Lowell, 104 over in Ward 3.
Bridging the Pawtucket Canal.
The coolest part of this project, the one that is going to be the most visible to the public, is the installation of the signature bridge, which will span the canal through the break in the remnant wall.
And household recycling do's and don'ts.
4 categories: tin and aluminum, paper, glass, and plastic. Nothing outside of those 4 categories.
Stay with us. Welcome to LTC News. I'm your news anchor, Alanna Flood. After a marathon election season, Lowell voters finally went to the polls on September 4th to choose their candidates for the general election in November. The most watched local race was for the U.S. House of Representatives to fill the seat held by Nikki Tsongas, who will retire this term. 10 Democratic candidates worked hard for a win, and in the end, 2 candidates were so close that a recount is likely. Lori Trahan was ahead of Daniel Coe by 52 votes by Wednesday morning. 2 current Lowell City Councilors were the top vote-getters for the state Senate seat that was held by Eileen Donahue before she left to become Lowell's city manager. In that race, between 5 candidates, Edward Kennedy beat Rodney Elliott by 258 votes. Ratty Mom won re-election to the state representative seat he has held since 2015. Because the districts tend to vote solidly Democratic, we expect the winners of the Democratic primary to go on to win against their Republican challengers in November. There are 3 major construction projects in progress at the Hamilton Canal Innovation District: a new parking garage, the Judicial Center building, and the addition of 2 streets and a bridge across the Pawtucket Canal.
So the garage will be underway by December. And we anticipate the contractor getting on site, maybe doing some mobilization throughout the winter to begin significant construction activities next spring.
The cost for the design and construction of the garage is approximately $37.5 million and will be paid for by the City Parking Enterprise Fund. So
it is an entirely city-owned and operated project and really a great commitment to the district on behalf of the city.
Following the spirit of the Innovation District, the garage design will incorporate smart development features, such as a vegetated or green wall on the side facing Canal Place 3, and a green roof, to both mitigate stormwater drainage and to provide a visible green space to the condo dwellers living above. Directly in front of the garage will be a dedicated pedestrian area.
That area will be in the front of the garage with 2 public green spaces also in front of the garage. We're calling those are parcels 12 and 13. Both are dedicated green spaces on the HCID North, 2 parks to be built. They will not be built as part of the garage, but they are in the plan, and certainly the city seeks funding always, to construct those. And then as the district gets built out, we will continue to connect the canalways through to create, an even better pedestrian circulation strategy here in the district.
Work on the Justice Center is well underway, and it is expected to be completed around this time next year. 7 district courts will spend the fall of 2019 moving in. They hope to be open for business on January 1st, 2020.
We are trying to time the garage, the construction of the garage, to be open simultaneously with the opening of the courthouse. We think we're still going to make it, but we may be a couple months off.
In between the Judicial Center and the garage, the city is putting in a new bridge over the Pawtucket Canal and creating 2 new streets, Street F and Street G. This part of the project is paid for with state and federal money.
Street, we call Street F, will be running from Dutton Street across through the break in the remnant wall to connect with Canal Street on the other side. Future Street G is a cross street here, which will be the entrance to the garage and ultimately a throughway around to the other side of the Canal District North, allowing for some emergency and other traffic to get around these development sites, which currently are the National Park parking lots. The coolest part of this project, the one that is going to be the most visible to the public, is the installation of the signature bridge, which will span the canal through the break in the remnant wall, all by design. The remnant wall, in fact, was built that way to accommodate this bridge.
The bridge will arrive in 3 pieces, which will be bolted together before a crane drops it into place over the canal this month. It will open to vehicle and pedestrian traffic this winter, with lighting and landscaping installed by next spring.
It's truly going to be a signature installation here in the Canal District.
Wind Development will construct an apartment building behind the remnant wall and a ground-level plaza and restaurant.
Once we build the signature bridge through the remnant wall to line up with Canal Street on that side, Wind will be doing their development on either side of that bridge street.
Wind's development will be a mixture of market rate, workforce, and affordable housing. Construction will be intense this spring, with these projects taking place on both sides of the canal. We will have to be patient, but by 2020, downtown will be transformed. On August 30th, Eastern Bank and the Lowell Spinners teamed up to provide a youth baseball clinic for 13 youngsters from the greater Lowell area. The kids got to play catch and do drills with Spinners players and coaches, and even take batting practice on the field before the game. One lucky child was randomly picked to throw out the first ceremonial pitch.
You gotta go inside, outside, inside, outside. You gotta get him on the round. You gotta keep him on the round. You with me?
Yeah!
Well, the Spinners have had a long-standing partnership with Eastern Bank. It was great this year to be able to take it to the next level. With their partnership with David Ortiz, it's a natural bridge between the Red Sox organization and the city of Lowell here. And it's important for us to be able to not only make that connection with the Red Sox organization with Eastern Bank, but also to bring that here to the community. And when we do clinics, we do a variety of different clinics and we have for the past 22 years, for children of all ages. It's important to be able to make that connection on a variety of different levels. Number one, exercise. And number two, to be able to inspire people to do the best they possibly can to get to the next level. Well, with 62 languages spoken in the high school here alone, and there being such a large Latin American population in the Merrimack Valley, it's important for us to make sure that our players, and I convey that to them the first day here in our team meeting, about the diversity in this community, so that their efforts can be reflective of the efforts in this city. So they may not speak Khmer, but it's important to be able to make certain that when they're out in the community to connect with the Cambodian community. You know, you're in your third generation now of Cambodian Americans, and it doesn't have to be about baseball. Again, it's about working hard to accomplish your goals to get to the next level. And when our players see the diversity in the community that's reflected in their clubhouse, it's exciting for them to be able to get back.
Eastern Bank only works with spokespeople that have similar goals and missions that we do and our organization does. So David Ortiz just has a phenomenal spirit of giving. You know, he does a lot for his home from Dominican and for the area. So, you know, he's just a good fit for us because we have the same ideals. And I mean, he's David Ortiz too, so it's a great fit for us because, you know, he's such an icon in the area, and those kids are very lucky to get that ball. So that's awesome. So Eastern Bank, as a mutual bank, which means we're not a stock company or a private company, we basically have an open charter, and that means that we give to our communities. It's part of our mission. So our mission is to give 10% of our net earnings to charity every year. Within that annual giving, we choose a targeted grant area. So this year happens to be empowering women. Last year it was immigrants in our communities.
According to Gunther Wellenstein, Lowell's solid waste and recycling coordinator, many people are recycling the wrong materials, which costs the city lots of money. Only 4 categories of things can go into household recycling bins.
4 categories: tin and aluminum, paper, glass, and plastic. Nothing outside of those 4 categories. Bring it way down to recycling 101, just the paper, clean and dry paper. So it's got to be newspaper and magazines and junk mail, stuff, cardboard. Pizza box is fine, but no pizza. What are the top 10 things that are your problems? Plastic bags, plastic bags, plastic bags, plastic bags. That is probably the biggest issue. Even they thought this was all recyclable, and maybe the bag is marked recyclable. All of the contents are recyclable, but nobody's going to open this knot. Nobody's going to unpackage this. This is going to pass through the equipment and become residue, and all your work of trying to prepare it is just going to go in the trash. And recycling is important because they can make new products of that material. And if you send them medical sharps and you send them diapers and you send them, then they can't make new stuff out of it. And even worse, now you're contaminating the stuff that could possibly be good. The trucks from Billerica and the trucks from Chelmsford and the trucks from Burlington all arrive at the same plant. So if Lowell's stuff is contaminated, it gets poured on the same tipping floor. So this is a case of one bad apple ruining not just our stuff, but everybody's stuff that's coming in. The issue we're having is right now the recycling sorting facility that's receiving 7,000 tons a year from residents. It's a curbside mix, single stream, comes to Billerica, and they've been finding that 25% of that 7,000 is contamination. Clothing that's tattered and torn, the food, the styrofoam takeout with the pad thai dinner still in it. We don't want that stuff. And then it goes out the back end as trash, and we get billed triple damages. Last month's bill was about $15,000 just for what we call residue, or the stuff that passes through. And that's going to add up. We're looking at maybe $500,000 more for next year's processing because of the continued contamination. So it's a big job. Every day, 5,000 of them are putting out trash and recycling. 5,000 wheel carts a day we have to make sure are clean and acceptable. 500,000 isn't necessarily a fine. They're anticipating that to clean the 7,000 tons, they're already guessing that it's going to be $500,000. So if we can do that ourselves, then we're going to save maybe half of that in penalties, in residue, in cleanup charges. So it is really incumbent on us and residents to get the message and do it right. The fact that you have 2 containers, you can put it in the trash, and it's going to cost $80 a ton for the newspaper, for the box, or for paper, or put it into the recycling where it costs $20 a ton. So it's a cost issue which container you put it into. And yes, the paper becomes new paper and you have to cut down less trees. But the benefit is you put it in the expensive container and it goes over the scale, and we're going to pay $80 a ton for that same stuff.
With landfills almost full, we need to pay attention to what we discard. For the past 2 years, on a Saturday in September, the Lowell Kinetic Sculpture Race took over the streets of Lowell and the waters of the Merrimack River. LKSR is a crafty, human-powered celebration of art and kinetic design, along with a little bit of zany mayhem. Race teams from across the country compete with homemade non-motorized vehicles that can travel across the cobblestones of Middle Street through a maddening mud pit and be able to stay afloat for a jaunt down the Merrimack. The organizers are gearing up to do it again this year on Saturday, September 22nd.
A kinetic sculpture is an all-terrain, human-powered vehicle designed to race through an obstacle course that we create right here in the city of Lowell. It begins right downtown at the intersection of Market and Palmer, and you can see these amazing works of art travel from the center of town through our first obstacle, which is Bone Shaker Alley, right down the cobblestones of Middle Street. From there, they continue to the Tsongas Center to tackle the maddening mud pit, straight to the Sampus Pavilion, DCR Lowell Heritage State Park for the water obstacle, and whoever survives races back to downtown for the dramatic finish.
This year, we have a lot of exciting new things that are happening, including 5 new teams that are coming from Lawrence. They're all student teams.
We are really excited to bring some interesting changes to you this year, including a route extension that will take us through the UML campus.
Sculptor Jay Hungate raced the first 2 years in his own design, called the iconic flying fish. This year, he brings something new.
This year I'm making a new machine with my daughters. It'll be the Cosmic Cruiser, and hopefully it'll float.
From now through the day of the race, LKSR artifacts will be on display at Air Lofts Gallery on Middle Street.
We will be showing some of our trophies, lots of pictures, a little history about the race, and lots of fun things.
The race, now in its third year, takes several months of planning with a skeleton crew of volunteers. On race day, however, close to 100 volunteers are needed to make it all work smoothly. The organizers say that volunteers won't go away empty-handed.
You get an amazing t-shirt. Michael, show them their t-shirt. This year's t-shirt, we haven't released the design yet because it was made by a local artist and it's really special, but they will be just as soft as these, brought to you by Northeast Custom Apparel, which is our t-shirt partner. And in addition to a front row seat to LKSR, which if you've ever been to the race, you know is really hard to get. Be right up in front of the action, get your comfy t-shirt, and hang out with us for the day. We're surprisingly not scary.
Spectator guides can be found online, and here's a tip. Riding your bike is the best way to follow the race and see everything. Cobblestones Downtown is hosting the awards ceremony, which is immediately following the race. And now it's time for this week's Sunspot, with Lowell Sun Enterprise editor Chris Scott.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Chris Scott, the Enterprise editor at The Sun. Thanks for tuning in to this week's edition of Sunspot. I want to remind you of the date that we're recording this. This is September 6th, 2 days after the primary. With me is one of Lowell's most legendary politicians, Steve Panagiotakos. Steve, thanks for coming
Legend in my own mind.
on such short notice. I remind you about the date because we're going to obviously talk about Lori Trahan versus Dan Coe. But between when Steve and I talked this morning and this ultimately airs, things might have changed just a little bit. Yeah. Okay, so let's start with two other races, though, that we've both been following very closely. There was the race for the 1st Middlesex Senate District, the seat that you used to represent when you were in the Senate. That race featured 3 former mayors, a guy from Westford, and it was taken by Ed Kennedy.
An elected official from Westford. And also, I believe Terry also served on our Greater Lowell School Committee as a Lowell representative.
I'd have to go back and check that.
I'm almost positive.
Right. But what was
and then John Drinkwater was the vice president of the AFL-CIO statewide. So.
What was your reaction to that when you saw that Kennedy finished on top?
Well, I think going into it...
Were you surprised?
No. I think everybody thought Ed was going to be the front runner in this race and had the best shot of getting there. And it proved that he did. Not without some, serious challenges, and one coming from an unexpected source, John Drinkwater, who came from nowhere and almost pulled it off, or got close enough 400 or 500 votes, right?
I think he finished second.
Finished second, Rodney,
beating the 2 former mayors.
Right, yeah. And Rodney, you knew, would be strong. And Billy was a proven vote getter from before. Question with Terry Ryan was he was going to win Westford, and he did big. Could he translate that into big wins in the rest of the towns and then get a little bit of a base in Lowell? And then it would have been close. But at the end of the day, Ed's candidacy was the one that the majority of people chose.
How much do you think that Lowell High School question figured into Ed Kennedy's candidacy? Because Ed, as you know, when he was the mayor, really led the opposition to Cawley successfully, I might add, and he was, on the front page of the newspaper day after day, and he really led that fight. Do you think that helped him?
Well, Ed has been a proven vote getter for years, for long before I even,
the 70s?
Long before I even got involved. Okay, so he's a again, he had a big hiatus there and came back, but he's been a proven vote getter any time he's run. So that was good. But that issue definitely has helped. I mean, that definitely gave him a base of loyalty, a bigger base of loyalty than we would have had previous to that. And I think that was very, very helpful in this race.
Now, staying with this race just for another minute or so, because I want to talk about the other couple. His Republican opponent now in that race is a guy from Lowell, John McDonald. He's run for city council, albeit unsuccessfully. He had ads queued up on WCAP the day of the election, September 4th, just blasting his opponent. It ends up being Kennedy. What are you anticipating in that race? Boy, that looks like that's going to be a Donnybrook.
Well, it looks like it. I mean, when you have open seats like that and you have some very strong differences of opinion on issues, then, those will be certainly well vetted during the campaign, and that's what's going to happen.
I'm looking forward to that.
The hope is it doesn't, it's one thing to have, opposition on issues. with going on. It's another thing to be really vindictive and negative.
Okay, well, let's just stick there. So there's a page one story in today's newspaper where McDonald's slams him for an ethics violation he had about 3 decades ago. And I thought Kennedy had a pretty good response saying, you know, that was a very long time ago. I learned my lesson. But what does that tell you?
Yeah, exactly. They're going to throw. He's going to throw whatever he can at him. You know what I mean? But it is a very long time ago, and how relevant is it to what happened today? And it was. I'm sure Ed will tell you it was a mistake in judgment that he made then, and owned up to it. And it wasn't a huge.
It was $500, right?
And let's let's go on. We've all made mistakes. Okay, with he who has not sinned, let him cast the first stone. So I'm putting my stone down.
All right, let's move on to the race for the 18th Middlesex State Representative seat, where Roddy Malm, the incumbent, faced opposition from 2 other Cambodians in the community, including a former city councilor, who, by the way, also had an ethics complaint, but plus Jim Leary, a former member of the school committee
and city council.
And the city council. Roddy was able to fend off those challenges.
He was.
What do you think about that?
I thought it would be a close race. You can just see it. I'll tell you what, in that race, Rithy did an unbelievable job at the end. I think he didn't quite peak yet. If he had another week to 10 days, he might have.
That's Rithy Young, the former city councilor.
He might have pulled this off, because he gets started a little late from what I could see, at least where I was up in the district, you know. And he pulled a good vote and finished in second. Jim's candidacy started off really good and strong, and it just kind of stalled a little bit there. But Jim had been a proven vote-getter up there. It had been his best precincts, most of them. And so you knew he was going to be very competitive. And Roddy, at the end of the day, look, Roddy, people, when you're the incumbent, all right, for people to beat an incumbent, you have to go after that incumbent on issues. You know, things that, where are the difference between you and that incumbent, or where did that incumbent fail, you know, in representing the people? And they really didn't do that. Well, and so you didn't create that perception in people's minds that there was an issue with Roddy. And Roddy's a very likable guy. You know what I'm saying?
That's his #1 attribute. But listen, you've heard it as well as I have, that when it comes to constituent services and doing some of those things that the other reps and senators from the area do, Roddy just doesn't seem as energized or connected to those issues. And those other candidates could have hit him on that, but they really didn't.
Yeah, but to hit him on that, you have to have something specific. You can't just talk generalities. You know, so that's what I'm saying. You have to really target in on something that's specific, that's provable. You know, and then the people will start listening. If it's just generalities, we hear it every day, right? You know, it's just opinion.
What do you think the future has in store for Jim Leary? You know, he lost the campaign for city council last November when he was for Cawley. You know, going back to that issue, and now he's lost this. Do you think there's a political future for him here in Lowell, or do you think he's going to maybe just kind of lay low for a little while?
I don't know what personally what he's going to decide to do, but you know, I think Jim will. You know, he's been a proven vote-getter in the past. He's you know, so he could certainly come back. You know, there's no doubt about it. Right circumstances, you know, right energy for the campaign, right election.
Okay. Speaking of elections, the big election on Tuesday was the race for the 3rd Congressional District. You know, we had 10 candidates vying to succeed Rep. Nikki Songas. Rufus Gifford took himself out of the mix early Tuesday night. I think it was about 10 o'clock. He conceded. That left Matthias from Lawrence, Trahan from Westford, and Coe from Andover. You and I spoke a couple times on Tuesday night. Hey, what are you hearing? Now we know Matthias is out, and it's between at least on September 6th.
L'Italien's out too.
Oh, L'Italien too,
so
right.
Put her on the equation.
There's all this talk about the recount. By the time people see this, we'll probably know for sure. But you know, Laurie's been out there strong, saying that she's the victor, and you know, let's move on to fight Rick Green. Good strategy.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Every vote's been counted right now, except for 100 in Lowell, 104 over in Ward 3. That I think it was because of ballot box malfunction. They had to hold them, and they'll count them once the Secretary of State gives them the okay. I would think by today or tomorrow, because he's going to certify official by Saturday, I believe.
Right.
So those numbers should begin. I would suspect, given what the rest of the results were over in that ward, in that precinct, that Lori will probably extend her lead by about another 20 votes or so. So it should be able to about 70 to 75 votes. Now you got to recount. Question on the recount is, do you go district-wide or precinct-wide?
You had some good insight on this. Please talk about that.
Well, if you're Coe, you probably don't want to go. You certainly don't want to recount Lowell, right? So you might go precinct by precinct. Try to, you know, especially like places like Bethune and Haverhill where he did well. You know what I'm saying? And some other places, and see if that's where you can get the mistakes that are going to fall in your favor. if you're Lori, then you want to protect against that and be ready to go for a district-wide recount because you want everything counted. You know, Lowell, Chelmsford, Tingsboro, Westford. You know, I mean, Drake, where you did really well. So that's the question. The 500 signatures for the district-wide recount have to be due on Friday. Right. This Friday by 5 o'clock. Lowell and a few other towns close at 12 on Friday. So you got to make sure you get those in early. And then the precinct by precinct one, I believe it's 10 person by precinct, 10 Democrat. It's all Democratic signatures. 10 Democrats have to sign it on each the precincts that you do. And they have till Monday, I believe, for that one. You were saying off the air, and I'd like to bring it out here, that Coe has to seek a recount. He spent so much money, so much effort, and you said he... Does he have to? Well, I think given, what's it, 1/10 of 1%? And you've had, you know, you almost owe it to your supporters and everybody that's been out there helping just to make sure that it's right. Steve, Bill Galvin, the Secretary of State, was in the Sun offices the week before last for the editorial endorsement, which he did receive. But I was also able to pin him down on just some column fodder, which I used in this past Sunday's column, where he predicted accurately that the race for the third, the finish could be messy, and we might not know for several days. Man, he was right on the money. Were you expecting that too, or was this kind of a curveball? I'll tell you what I've been saying from the beginning, and Marty, Meehan, and I both agreed, or like 3-4 months ago, that the winner would win with about 22%. Yep. And I think that's almost exactly where Lori's number is. It's right around there. You know, because you can just do the math and look at it. So that being said, yeah, there was always a good possibility for a recount, but Secretary Galvin, he knows this stuff. He knows his stuff. He's the best at it. We even had him laughing a little bit, believe it or not. We only have about 2 minutes left, so let's but I want to go back to that race because as we look back at it, there was a point in time that a decision was made that changed this result, and no one's caught on to it yet, really. Enlighten us. It was when Terry Ryan decided to move from his congressional race to the state Senate race. Terry Ryan got 1,500 votes in Westford and killed the field of the Senate race. He would have taken 400, 500, 600, 700 votes where Lori Loureiro ran so well, and most of them would have been Lori's votes. That could have been. And that would have been changed the difference. That would have changed. That would have been Coe by about 200 or 300 votes. That was a major key point. Interesting. Now, going forward, either Coe or Lori will be facing a well-known Pepperell businessman. Yeah, Rick Green. Rick Green. What's your prognostication looking for? Well, Rick will run a really good campaign. I mean, he knows what he's doing. He's been at it a while. Any chance, though, for a Republican? I think it's just tough in this year. I think there's just so much anti-Trump headwinds in this area in Massachusetts that I think it's just difficult. Are you surprised that Jeff Deal beat Beth Lindstrom in the Senate race? I'm not surprised that he beat her, but surprised that Beth didn't do better. Yeah. Because I really like Beth as a candidate, and I've worked with her when she was down there. She was great to work with, very competent, professional woman. Someone you really enjoy working with. You know, I think we only have about 30 seconds left. So, you know, you had Deal, who's a Trump sycophant, win for the Senate. Beth, who was the more moderate Republican, didn't. What does that say for Charlie Baker running for governor against Bob Massey? Anything? He's running against Jay Gonzalez. Jay Gonzalez, yeah. Bob Massey lost. I apologize. Yeah. Nothing. I don't think it means anything. I think the biggest thing that Baker has to worry about is Trump coming in campaigning for Deal and causing him some issues. There you go. So it could be an interesting fall. It will be. Steve, thanks for coming in. I appreciate it. I always like to talk to you. My pleasure. Thank you for tuning in to this week's edition of Sunspot. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with some more political news from Lowell and Greater Lowell. Good evening, everyone.
That's it for this edition of LTC News. You can find us on LTC channels 8 and 99, online at ltc.org, on Roku at LTC Lowell, or get the link on Facebook. I'm Alanna Flood. Thanks for joining us.